Hey folks, so we're up here in my seed starting room and we're going to start a couple different species of oaks. Let's flip around and show you these. So number one here, we have, and only number one because I have the most of these, we have Quercus prenoides dwarf chinkapin oak, also known as dwarf chestnut oak. You can see where I ordered these from Whitewater, Native Seeds, up in Epworth, Iowa. This is the second time I've ordered from them. I will say, so they send in these bags with the holes punched, which is great for ventilation, but I had to put the paper towels in here because when I received them, they were already starting to dry out a little bit, which you don't want your acorns to dry out. If they fully dry out, they'll go bad, which if they were a red oak, I wouldn't worry as bad because they wouldn't have started to sprout and really use water yet. These are in the white oak family, so I bet we just grab a little tiny handful here. Yeah, you can see already germinating. So white oaks don't need a cold stratification period. They just immediately start germinating shortly after hitting the ground, sometimes even in the tree. So what will happen is if they're not kept moist, all acorns, if they're allowed to fully dry out, they just won't germinate. But because they're already attempting to utilize energy, right, these guys will dry out so much faster with that punticle if they're not kept moist. So I added these paper towels because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to it right away because I've had them for about a week and a half. And then for a little longer, I've had these from a friend who sent them just like I asked with a damp paper towel in there in a Ziploc bag, and I can't get it to open. There we go. So, and you can see they're all already starting to germinate too. These are, which is, you can see how long that's getting. We really got to get these planted, so that's what we're going to do. These here are Gambel oak acorns. I've been trying to get Gambel oak acorns for a while, but every time I go out west, which is where they're grown, where they grow native, they're not native to Missouri. Gambel oaks are a western oak species. And what I really like about Gambel oaks, this one is just barely starting to split at the bottom. What I really like about Gambel oaks is I find these in the craziest of places out west, okay? Arches National Park. These are all over the place. They're one of the predominant species of things out there besides like mesquite bushes and things like that, or they're super drought hardy stuff. These oaks grow, and they're, I mean, like 2-foot tall shrubs out there. 4 foot is the biggest one I saw, but they grow and they put on acorns. But every time I'm out west, they're all over ravines out there. If any of my viewers are out west, you can attest to this. They're all over the place. Super hardy, known as a scrub oak out there, but the reason why common names really suck, I don't remember Gambel oak's Latin name, so I'm sorry, but Gambel is a better name to call it than scrub oak because Quercus prenoides dwarf chinkapin oak is also called scrub oak. They're definitely two different species. These have a more serrated leaf. They look honestly a lot like a chinkapin, and for the longest time were confused with chinkapin, but they only get like 5 to 7 feet tall. Whereas chinkapin oak gets much taller, 20, 30 foot tall, easy. They're still a small tree, but 20, 30 foot tall. These guys, also Gambel oak, stay on the smaller side, even when they're not growing in literally sand in a desert. We've also found them at Garden of the Gods, which is another spot out in Colorado that's just sand and rock. And out there, down in some of the lower spots, not near water, mind you, just lower than on a rock face. They're on the rock faces too, but they're only like 3 foot tall there. Down in the bottom, where I guess they get a little bit more humidity settling down maybe, they're like 15 feet tall and growing really densely together. They're so successful. So my hope is to try to grow them as a coppice species and a nut production species for the pigs because they are so drought tolerant. And you know, with how much drought we've been dealing with the last several years, I am really hopeful that these guys who are pretty prolific bearers and really drought resistant and a white oak species, so therefore low in tannins, they don't get real tall, so pruning them to a smaller size, which I would like to help maintain our silvopasture, should be a conducive strategy for these. So we're going to give them a go. I've got a small little bag here because that's the issue. Every time I go out west, they drop really early in the season, like August. They're already dropping. So there'll be a very early season nut crop for the pigs. The chinkapins are dropping in about September. So they're a little bit later. So it would be these guys then these guys, and then it would be about time then for all of our sawtooth oaks to really start dropping. So we're kind of getting every month a different species will really kind of be kicking in. We also just got some persimmon seeds, but those have to cold stratify, of an early production persimmon that I found that was already dropping in August, fully ripe, dropping end of August. And then I've got one out by our pond that we propagate from that doesn't drop till about November. So November, December. So kind of getting those species and cultivars or varieties that are dropping at different times. Now, we do a lot of seed production, so with these, I can tell because the species as a general rule drops at these times. With the persimmon, it's just kind of a, well, the parent dropped at this, so cross our fingers that that's roughly what we get. So what we've got here is we've got our containers where we're going to plant these in. Because even though these are, I will not be selling any of these. These will all only be planted on my farm this year. We may sell some of these, the dwarf chinkapins, this year because there's a lot of them in here. But I want to put a lot of them, and because I got these. If I hadn't got these, I maybe would have kept all of these and planted them in all my open spots. But because I have some of these, the Gambel oaks, I'm going to run out of space. And because we got all those black locusts, which this video is being filmed immediately after this one, so there's no growth yet because that was 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry. So no update there. But I will need a little bit of space, so we may sell some of these, or we'll just put them in bigger pots and wait, and if there's openings in the field from something dying, then we'll put them in as they're a little bit bigger. So, yeah, these are, we're going to grow them in, because like I told you in this video, I really like doing this method for a lot of our stuff, just the bulb tray with the weed barrier, because then they get that nice fibrous root system. But we're going to do these in containers, so they're a little faster and easier to just get out in the field. What these look like, it's like this. Okay. These are fantastic as a little forestry thing. You could just carry around a ton of these. They've got a nice, long, thin thing for those long taproot species like the oaks. So plenty of space, but each of these trays holds about 98 of them. So lots of them in one tray. And all we're going to do is we're going to do a little bitty space in the top so that that radical can go down and then push it on top. We want to leave, which do want to show you, and then I'll show you at the end when we're done, but we want to leave that acorn visible on the top, okay? You can completely bury them, but then it makes much more work for the shoot to come up through. This is how they'd be in the wild, right? They just lay on the surface, they don't get covered up, and they shoot down that root. Now, if you're planting them outside, it is a little bit better to go ahead and bury it from the standpoint of, then it hides it from squirrels. But in here, in our tree starting space, which I'll show you that real quick. This is just, we had this weird built-in bench, and I just built essentially a tiny pond. This is just pond liner, okay, stapled onto it, and we fill it so that everything is bottom watered with a few inches of hot water so that we have bottom heat. For in the winter, we have the one window. It doesn't really create enough light. We've tried putting on lights in here before, but all our outlets, the grounds are hot. Perks of a 100-year-old house. I've got to rewire the entire house. So the metal wiring and the chains, when I tried to hook a setup, were live, and that was a great way to burn my house down. So we decided not to do that. But it'll hit these 3 trays, no problem. And then they'll move elsewhere to start hardening off by the time February-ish, when I'll start all my other ones, like the persimmons and things like that in here. They'll get to move down, or I'll figure out my electrical by then. Either way, maybe we'll buy a little greenhouse. Don't know. Let's go ahead and get these all planted, and then we'll show you. All right, so we're all in. We wound up with 105.5 pound of the Quercus prenoides, which I forgot to tell you why we want to grow those. So Quercus prenoides, also known as scrub oak, they're a very short oak. Again, that like 10 to 12-ish foot tall on average for adult trees. But they'll start producing at like 3 to 7 years old. And, you know, that seems crazy. I have 12 out in the field. One of them did produce this year, and it was 3 years old. 2 years in ground, 1 year in a pot from a seedling, and it produced 9 acorns. So that's not much. But on most of your, like your just standard white oak, Quercus alba, that's 20 years. Bur oaks can be up to 40 years. There are some individuals, of course, that produce faster, and as evidenced by I had 12 of these out there, and only one produced that third year. But the others have little signs that make me think they're going to produce better next year. So the fact that they, as a species, can generally produce that young, their average is that young, that's exciting. So we want those. And then that's pretty similar with these guys. These are a little bigger. We wound up with 27 of the Gambel oaks. So better drought resistance, although these are a northwestern species too, still native to our area, but it's like northern Missouri and over, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Iowa, that area. So they should still do great down here. Pretty drought tolerant, produce at an insanely young age, and produce a good crop of acorns. So, and they're a white oak, which is why we're able to plant them right now as soon as they're dropping out. Because what they typically do is they'll drop that radical, and then it gets cold, so then they go dormant. But they have rooted themselves in the ground to hopefully make it a little harder for a squirrel or something else to get them, right? But what they'll do now in these pots and in this tent, because this is a south-facing window, it'll bring in heat all day. We bottom water with hot water as it goes. We let it get pretty low and then refill it back up. And that hot water keeps this area steaming, which will be great for these as they're trying to root, and great for these guys as they're trying to germinate and grow. They'll think, oh God, it's just still spring, and they'll just go. They'll skip that dormancy. And we do this every year. So like, I'm not just saying that, like, I know that that's what will happen. And you guys will get to see over the next several months. These guys, by the time we put them out, they should be easily this tall, 12 to 18 inches, no big deal. So they'll essentially get a free year's worth of growth. Then they'll go out this spring and grow that whole season. So they'll get a huge jump start on the season, and they'll be able to just pull right out because they're in pots and plant straight in the ground. So we'll get a big jump. And so essentially by the end of next year, their first year in the ground, they'll actually be 2 growing seasons old, because they'll get all winter here and then all summer out in the field. So super awesome. Absolutely love any way that we can put some trees out in the field. That, one, these are great for wildlife from the standpoint of lots of insects love white oak leaves, but our pigs will get to eat tons and tons of acorns, and we can do more and more talks about the benefits of acorns and chestnuts and apples and pears and all the other wonderful things you can plant in your field for your pigs to eat, or deer if you're into that. Which, I mean, we are, but we never see deer. The dogs do a good job of scaring them off. They just ran by. So, yeah. If y'all like these Silvopasture ones, make sure to keep an eye on that Silvopasture playlist. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I've got a lot more that we're walking out and you're actually seeing more stuff than this. So check out some of those other videos. I'll drop some more of the Silvopasture and silviculture ones at the end of this in the little things. So check out some of those. Maybe look at the black locust one and see that. And then we've got some on apples, and we'll be doing some stuff on our willows soon, and all of our coppice and pollard stuff to give you guys an idea of that before all the leaves start dropping off. And then this spring we do cutting and how we do that. So beyond that, you know what? Y'all just have a great rest of your week.